Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Buon pomeriggio a tutti. Welcome to today's conference dedicated to the Balkans and the Black Sea. We have a focus from the Foundation on the region since a decade, and we continue to do so because we are addressing issues very close to our values and our interests. And I'm speaking, of course, about Southeastern Europe. In other words, this large area going from the Adriatic Sea to the Black Sea. A special part of Europe, at the crossroads of many cultures and influences, rich in history and humanity, of a great strategic importance. And as you know, it represents today a priority from many points of view, first of all in political terms. It has always been crucial for European security, but today is more true than ever, as we live in a changing international environment where threats and opportunities come from various angles, where the wisdom of nations is called into question by difficult choices. Let's remember that our continent is witnessing war and violence in an unprecedented way since the end of the Second World War, because Ukraine is still subject to a brutal Russian invasion that has no justification and is the source of suffering and destructions that are intolerable. And it is our moral duty to continue to support its people as much as possible. We consider that the Balkan and the Black Sea region should become, sooner rather than later, part of the Euro-Atlantic community. And of course, the invasion of Ukraine has given a new sense of urgency to this issue, which is already there. NATO is still upholding the open door policy, and the European Union is active implementing a policy of inclusion. Today, a renewed effort is underway towards full integration, which is welcome news, I think. The region is a complex one due to the history from local nationalism to fragile economies, embattled democracies, while illegal trafficking, organized crime, and environmental damages remain widespread, unfortunately. This is a good reason, the best possible reason to accompany those nations and their people from fragmentation to inclusion, from instability to long-term security, to modern government, and to an accomplished rule of law. I like to underline also, in this respect, that NATO and the European Union are working hand in hand in line with their respective added values, but for the same objective of inclusion. NATO remains in Kosovo with its KFOR operation, keeping the same aim proven over 24 years already of security projection. We shall not forget that the region is subject to internal strife and external malign influences, and unfortunately, Russia being an actor in this respect. It is also worth recalling, and I like to say this, that in a few days, a general election is going to take place in Serbia. It is an historic country, and I sincerely hope it is going to retake its place in the mainstream of European history and also in its institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, the Foundation is addressing in today's conference a number of issues. Our tradition is to promote a friendly conversation aimed at finding good solutions and encouraging the actors to continue in their ongoing efforts. As usual, our spirit in the event is to promote an informed debate at a scientific level and with a spirit of respect. And we are encouraged, of course, by the recognition that the region has an international priority. We give a priority in the discussion that we're going to have afterwards to voices coming from the region, because nobody can substitute voices coming from the region and from the respective countries. This is the 10th conference of the NATO Defense Scholar Foundation on these issues, and I welcome here such a large number of speakers and moderators of high value and well-proven experience, many of them also my personal friends. I have this privilege. I wish to thank them warmly for having accepted this invitation to Rome, which is a natural place for a discussion on the region. You see in the program that we are touching upon a number of crucial issues under the catchword of resilience, an instrument to accompany the aspiration to reforms and the final inclusion in the European and Euro-Atlantic institutions. I conclude wishing you an interesting day, an interesting discussion. I wish to take the occasion to thank, first of all, the staff of the Foundation for their enthusiasm, their good work, their dedication. It is not an easy work to organize such a complex and interesting conference as today. And of course, I thank all those institutions who helped us and supported us in making this event possible. Grazie per il vostro attenzione e buon pomeriggio a tutti.
Good afternoon, buonasera. For those of you that I have not met yet, my name is Mark Ozawa, and I'm a researcher at the NATO Defense College. First of all, I want to thank the ambassador and the organizers for the invitation to come speak and help perhaps set the stage. Before I give any talk, especially regarding NATO, I have to say that these are my own views as a researcher and not NATO policies or official positions. But I want to make a few points today in the brief amount of time that I have, and most of these points can be found in our publications, which are available on our website. So starting out, I think it's important not to forget why the Black Sea region and the Western Balkans are growing in importance strategically, certainly for NATO. And most of what I'm going to talk about, I'm pleased that the ambassador mentioned more points about the Balkans. Most of what I'm going to say is specifically geared to the Black Sea region. Russia has been gradually militarizing this region since 2014 and even before that, but at an accelerated rate after 2014 and the illegal annexation of Crimea. Until recently, NATO has been very much involved in the region, not only through allies, but also through partnerships, but has not had perhaps a coherent strategy towards the region. And why is that? There are different views, especially among NATO ally littoral states in the Black Sea region. Until recently, NATO has also been very much focused on the Baltic Sea region. Shortly after 2014, there was also a strong US bolstering of the presence in the Black Sea region, but this also began to decrease after 2016. Of course, everything changed in 2022 with the invasion, and Russia is playing its role now as posing the greatest security threat in the region. Now, in response, NATO has come into action and has, of course, after the invasion, deployed the NATO response force and is recalibrating the defense and deterrence posture on the eastern flank in quite a dramatic way, bolstering its presence on the eastern flank 7 times from 40,000 readiness force within 60 days to 300,000. I think what was one of the more interesting points that came out of the Vilnius summit is paragraph 79. And this is the first time that we see in a summit communique that the Black Sea region is recognized as an area of strategic importance. Looking further around the region, for better or worse, we are already seeing potential hotspots emerge, not only in the Balkans, but also in the Black Sea region. Of particular concern are developments in Moldova, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Georgia, and other CSTO member states in the South Caucasus and Central Asia. Although NATO and much of the media attention has been very much focused on conventional forces in response to Russia's conventional invasion of Ukraine, Russia's gray zone aggression continues, and it has actually been increasing over the last year. And this is something that we should not forget. So, what is also interesting is that for the first time, the US is showing signs of approaching the region from a strategic perspective. And we see this with the Black Sea Security Act, which has passed the Senate and may pass the House by the end of the year. But from my perspective, I think one of the most important developments is that we're finally beginning to see more agreement and consensus among the regional allies in the Black Sea and the Balkan regions. Allies that have in the past perhaps had different perspectives, but are coming more to agreement about the growing threats. So with respect to this conference today, I think I'm looking forward to sharing perspectives, getting to know different perspectives, but I think one of the most valuable products that can come out of this event and events like this are the relationships that we build, because policies and personalities can change, but the relationships tend to endure. So thank you very much, and I wish you all very fruitful discussions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ozawa, the voice of the NATO Defense College, our twin brother, if I may say so. Now I have the privilege to give the floor to Nicola De Santi. It's a special pleasure for me because he's a long-time friend, and what else? He's the head of the engagement section in the Public Diplomacy Division at NATO headquarters. So, if you like, one of the main actors in what is the external relations of the Atlantic Alliance toward the external world, which is not easy, with limited resources, with a lot of capacity. So I'm very happy to give you the floor, Nicola. Please come here.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Minuto Rizzo, first for the generous introduction, but also very much for the work that you're promoting in Italy to promote a better understanding of NATO's policies and goals. A lot of people have ideas about NATO. In many countries, NATO is also the object of ideological debate, but a few people know the facts. So it's very important that we promote understanding, that we explain the policies of the alliance. And this conference that you're organizing takes place at a particular juncture. First, because in just a month and a half, the alliance will enter its 75th anniversary. In Washington, NATO leaders will continue the process of adaptation that started with the new strategic concept in Madrid, then at the Vilnius Summit, which was just mentioned, and which will push forward the alliance into what I call the third phase of its history. The first phase of NATO's history was the Cold War, wherein through the key feature of the alliance, deterrence and defense, the alliance was able to keep the peace on the European continent for the longest period since the Roman Empire. Well, after all, it was not only between the NATO, then 16 NATO nations and the alliance, but it was the longest period since also countries, European countries, members of NATO, didn't fight in the European history among themselves. So this transatlantic dimension, the presence of the United States on the European continent during the Cold War, stabilized also the West-West relations, not only the East-West ones. So the first phase of the alliance ends when President Reagan and Gorbachev get rid of the intermediate, shorter range and intermediate nuclear forces. In other words, they make recede the threat, the existential threat, which was threatening the capitals through shorter range and intermediate nuclear forces of the European continent and strategic weapons towards threatening North America. So that phase not only ends, I would say, the Cold War as such, but it moves NATO from confrontation to cooperation in the security sphere. In November 1991, NATO does something historical. It makes public a new and revised strategic concept. I want to stress that the strategic concept of the alliance during the Cold War were secretive documents. We had 4 during the Cold War, secret documents. I read it at the NATO Defense College in 1989 when the Cold War, when I was there and the Cold War was still running. But in November 1991, NATO moves from confrontation to cooperation in the security sphere and enters its second phase of its history. The idea that the long-term vision for which the Allies defended their members during the Cold War would now become reality. The one of a Europe which would be united, which would be at peace, and which would be an area in which stability and security would be extended to the emerging democracies of Central and Eastern Europe. So NATO assisted the integration, the coming back to Europe, if you wish, the Europe of democracy, individual liberty, of the rule of law, of those countries that for too long had been unnaturally separated from the rest of Europe. So Europe became really united, would be again free, and would be at peace. And the idea of cooperative security, which was extended also to the countries in the Balkans, I see Solomon Passi here, with we have a long history of cooperation, was made concrete. But we have entered today something different, a different phase. Europe is not at peace any longer. Russia shattered the peace the moment in which it decided to invade a sovereign nation. And you said before, you spoke before about the moral duty to defend Ukraine. And we are defending a country which we are allowing to exercise a right of self-defense enshrined into the UN Charter, but we're also defending our security, the larger security of the transatlantic community, because we are containing Russia. And Russia was included in our security equation since the beginning. You know, there's a lot of disinformation going on today. But in November 1991, Russia was included in the North Atlantic Cooperation Council. In 1994, in the Partnership for Peace. In 1997, the Permanent Joint Council, an ad hoc political and practical cooperation between NATO and Russia was established. In 2002, in Rome, in Pratica di Mare, President Putin signed off to the Founding Act. One of the principles, the respect for national sovereignty on countries and the borders, which he violated after the famous speech he gave in 2007 at the Munich Security Conference, in which all the rhetoric of the Cold War came back. And then we had Georgia, just 1 year after. Then we had the Crimea. And today we have a war in Europe that we need to contain. But this is not the only security challenge that we face today, because, of course, the world has very much changed. We have entered the phase of the fourth industrial revolution, in which information technologies, but I would say the pace, the transformative effect of the technological progress that we have in all fields has put NATO in new challenges, emerging disruptive technologies, the fact that, coercive and hybrid tools challenge not only the NATO and the transatlantic community in the traditional domain, air, space, and the sea, but also in the information space, in the cyberspace, and in space. And China is also another thing that was not before in NATO's three strategic concept before, after the Cold War, but it became in Madrid also central in NATO. Of course, NATO doesn't want to have a confrontation either with Russia or with China. But what we want to do, we have to take into account the fact that we don't understand this excessive modernization. Why is China using coercive tools? Why is he using hybrid warfare? Why is he trying to establish a dependency from those civilian infrastructures in our countries that are crucial to project military power if we want to do, again, what we did at the beginning of the crisis in Bosnia? Because that's the important value of NATO, the ability also to work in crisis management. And if we talk about the Balkans, part of this transformation during the Balkans, and again, I see Solomon here, was that NATO, under a mandate of the United Nations in Bosnia, tried to implement the Dayton Accord, the accords that the parties themselves had agreed in Dayton, then signed actually in Paris. They're called the Dayton Accords, but they were signed in Paris, but they were agreed in Dayton. So these are in terms also of communication, the different things. But important there was that NATO was called upon implementing an agreement together with Russian Federation. Not a lot of people remember that the deputy commander of the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe during that operation, General Joel, the American, was a Russian general. Nobody remembers that we had the Russian military cell planning that operation in shape, the most secretive headquarters, military headquarters, strategic headquarters of NATO. And in Kosovo, they were on the ground with us again. The second operation, again, mandated by the United Nations, in which NATO tried to build security and stability in that region. And we continue to contribute to that by not only the fact that through the open door, and you spoke about, again, this at the beginning, we now have countries in the Balkans which are members of NATO. They are around, I would say, Serbia, and also they're creating an environment of security and stability which can be also the benefit to Serbia. And of course, we're very much engaged in supporting Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Secretary General just traveled a few weeks ago to the region. He went to see the NATO member countries of the Balkans, but also Bosnia, because it is important, Serbia, you know, and again, the Balkans is also a success story in terms of on promoting the complementarity between NATO and the EU. When we did several years ago the agreements for the release, and Ambassador Bisogniero was here, was also Deputy Secretary General at the time, the agreements between NATO and the EU for the release, monitoring, or recall of NATO's assets and capabilities, a complicated way to explain what. Then NATO would put its asset at the disposal of the European Union in case it would conduct an operation in the future. That's what's happening today with EU Operation Althea. The EU4 headquarters, is in shape, is in Brussels. The EU4 headquarters has the chief of staff in shape, who is the operational commander. So there is this effort of the whole international community promote the security and stability to this region. And in doing so, we also have, unfortunately, to take care of the fact that violence is erupting again, and that is not good news at all. Not only March when K4 was attacked, but also the recent violence in September. And the attempt today, because of also the way in which we're trying to contain the spillover conflicts for Ukraine, the malign interference also in the dynamics on the Balkans. And so that's why the Secretary General traveling there and the foreign ministers just a few days ago called for choosing the dialogue over violence, choosing stability and security over instability and insecurity. And we're doing so by assisting also Bosnia, we are assisting Serbia through defense capacity building. We spoke about resilience before, making these countries resilient, able to be resilient vis-a-vis the security challenges and threats that they face. So why are we doing this? Because in sum, and I close here, we want to contribute through both cooperative security for our partners, through crisis management, the two key security features of NATO, to the stability and security of this region, but also through the other one, deterrence and defense, to the security and defense of our own countries, the member countries in the region. The idea is always the same, is to project security and stability so the peoples and countries of this region can flourish, can perfect and improve their democracies, and can be part of the Euro-Atlantic community of nations through the membership that they aspire in the EU, and one of them also to NATO, but through cooperative security, to cooperation that we give also to those who don't want to be members of NATO through defense capacity building. We think we're continuing to advance the cause of security, stability, and ultimately contribute to peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola, for sharing such experience with us, also reminding all this history of the relationship between NATO and Russia, which is very often forgotten. In fact, you're right to point out that. So now the conference will start with this very distinguished first panel under your distinguished chairmanship, not for the first time. Please, you have the floor.
Would you like to take the seat? Great. So that I can still see you. Hello, and a very warm welcome from me as well. My name is Alexandra von Nahm. I'm Brussels Bureau Chief of DW, also known as Deutsche Welle, Germany's international public service broadcaster. And I'm very happy and honored to be chairing this first panel of this event. And we would like to talk about the challenges that NATO is facing in the Balkans and the Black Sea region, and about what kind of approach or approaches the alliance needs there, and of course, whether synergies can be obtained. And I'm very happy that we have excellent panelists here today who are willing to share with us their knowledge and insights. And I would like to very warmly welcome Tajan Ildem, a former NATO Assistant Secretary General for Public Diplomacy and currently the chairman of the Center for Economics and Foreign Policy Studies in Istanbul. And his input will be about the future of the Black Sea security and the strategic approach that is needed there. I'm also very happy to welcome you, Ambassador Olaf Reinertsen, who is the ambassador of Norway to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and there his embassy serves as a NATO contact point in the country. And his address will be on closing the gap in the Balkans, timelines, alternatives, and opportunities. Also very happy to see you here, Dr. Laris Geiser, who is analyst, scholar, and the former political advisor to the Kosovo force of NATO. And he will share with us his views on the alliance role in the wider Balkans. Last but not least, very happy that she's here with us, Ms. Alina Inayev, Senior Fellow with the German Marshall Fund based in Bucharest, and she will speak to us about the five key elements of a Black Sea strategy. And before we get started, I would like to share with you a housekeeping note. All of our panelists will have a short presentation, 7 minutes, and I was told to interrupt, which I would not do rather, so I would like to ask you to stick with the time limits, and then we start our discussion here, and then soon after that open up to your questions. So thank you very much for being with us, and I would like to start with you, if you may. Thank you.
Well, first of all, let me express my thanks and appreciation for the invitation. This is actually the second time that I'm attending this series of conferences, which is extremely important and timely. Now, a few words on the Black Sea security, which I will be dwelling most on. I fully agree with the perception, and it was explained before that in 2014 onwards, perhaps while NATO was boosting its deterrence and defense, the main focus was on Baltics rather than Black Sea. And it's a welcome development that now strategic concept refers to it, but not only strategic concept of NATO, but strategic compass of the European Union also talks about it. Now, we all know that the war ongoing in Ukraine unfortunately brought such challenges to the already existing complex security environment. But we need to understand that the profound change has already taken place in 2014 and before. In 2014, with the annexation of Crimea, in fact, the militarization of the peninsula by Russia created an anti-access area denial, A2AD capability for Russia to keep the region from any military operation or activity they didn't want to see. But most important than that, it used the peninsula for the projection of power towards the south. And my country, Turkey, was insisting that there should be a holistic, comprehensive approach given attention to different regions and their geographical continuum. And that's why I think we need to understand that this comprehensive approach should look not only to Black Sea in an isolated way, but the connectivity to Central Asia through the Caspian Sea, the Caucasus, the Balkans, and the Mediterranean in a rather full picture to be understood. Second, at that time, Russia was having a very strategic and calculated approach, especially towards Georgia and Ukraine. And we have heard the previous speakers alluding to what Russia has been doing since then. And at that time, I have to confess, because I was ambassador to NATO as permanent representative of my country, but also served as Assistant Secretary General, NATO's efforts were not that strategic. It was sporadic and somewhat ambiguous. Therefore, I think what we need to do is not only to look at from a maritime angle, but to look at all domains: land, maritime, air, and cyber. There are so many activities that we need to be aware of. Another point I have to highlight is the existence of protracted conflicts in the region. When we look at the wider Black Sea region, unfortunately, Russia has been exploiting the existence of these protracted conflicts to give it a sort of a room of maneuver, and this is something that needs to be taken into consideration. One other issue is we need to follow international law, since we always talk about rule-based international order, and we always complain Russia that they are not abiding by the rules, but there is Montreux Convention. And Montreux Convention sometimes is seen as a sort of an hindrance impeding deterrence and defense to be boosted in the region. Well, if we are going to follow this line, we would be mimicking what Russia has been doing by disrespect of international law. Montreux Convention is part and parcel of international law, and its stipulations, in fact, is a security and stability multiplier for the region. This has to be seen. Turkey, as the custodian of this convention, is, in fact, has invoked the relevant articles after the launch of the war in February 2022. And right now, there is a relative stability in that sense. My last important point would be that regional ownership is very important. It is good for the United States to come up with Black Sea Security Act, which we may applaud. But at the end of the day, it is the literal allies who should be expressing their priorities. It's more important than any other capital. And I'm very gratified to see that not only our three independent think tanks from Bulgaria, Romania, and Turkey, but also our respective governments are cooperating with a view to come up with capability development to address some of the issues, not only related to hard security, but also those to complement that. The recent example of it is mine counter measures activity, and the three countries are working together. They have developed a concept paper, and the task group will soon be operational, which will provide an opportunity for other allies and also littoral partners to contribute to this scheme. This cooperation could enhance to uncover other parts of very important connectivity issues, food security, demining, and all other relevant issues. Thank you.
Great discipline. Thank you very much. Right to the point. So we have heard some criticism about previous NATO efforts that they have not been strategic enough. I'm looking forward to your presentation, Ambassador, whether you will find some criticism as well with regard to the Balkans.
Would it be okay if I stand up?
Sure.
Yeah, since an ambassador, I would like to addressing my colleagues, and I like to do that standing.
Of course.
So colleagues, good to be here. Absolutely delighted to be in Rome. Many thanks to NATO Defense College and certainly its partners organizing this very timely and important seminar on the Balkans and Black Sea. I have been the Norwegian ambassador to Bosnia and Herzegovina for 3.5 years. I've been working with the region for 15 years. And my embassy, we have been the contact point embassy now almost for a year. The role of a CPE, that is all about public diplomacy. It is about disseminating information to the public, what NATO is all about, our values. What do we share? What are we members? The 31, soon 32. But it's also about counter disinformation and malign influence. And being a CPE ambassador in Bosnia and Herzegovina is, I believe, is fair to say, different than elsewhere, because it is coming with a great responsibility, which is both a blessing and a curse. Today, you will probably find me pessimistic, but my aim is to be honest and give you an account on what is the current situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. You may then say and ask, this we have heard before. Yes, you have. But I can tell you that the political crisis in Bosnia and Herzegovina has never been as serious as it is now, since its creation 28 years ago. The economic situation is never as bad as it is right now. And we have a unique demographic crisis. As an example, last year 140,000 people left this beautiful country. Experts fear that as many as 250,000 people will leave this year. That is 10% of the gross population in 1 year. So the current situation is that, yes, we do have a state-level coalition that is not functional. Some would even say it is dysfunctional. We have a constant and developing threat and actions of cessation of Republika Srpska, that is the Serb entity. We have continuous efforts to undermine the role of the High Representative, Christian Schmidt. We see a threat of Russian malign influence, lots of disinformation on NATO, and there is a hotline between the Serbian entity President Milorad Dodik and Vladimir Putin. Bosnia and Herzegovina, believe it or not, they received EU candidate status in December 2022. But EU carrots no longer seem to bear much fruit. Though the EU recently called to adopt the much-needed reforms for the opening of accession negotiations, little to no progress has, honestly, been seen. And despite these serious security challenges, the situation in the Ministry of Defense and the armed forces of BIH, that is simply a serious financial crisis. Soldiers in that army, they lack basic equipment. They lack uniforms, they lack boots. In early November, the EUFOR Althea mission, previously also referred to, that was extended for another year. This is a mission with the executive mandate to ensure a safe and secure environment. However, as we all know, the negotiations around the extension of this mandate are always pretty stressful, given the possibility of a veto of some rogue actors within the Security Council. We, the allies, we need to support EUFOR, because EUFOR badly needs our support. EUFOR needs to be reinforced due to lack of mobility and lack of presence. And we should convey publicly that we are very proud of EUFOR as NATO, because this is the only mission that actually came out of the so-called Berlin Plus agreement. So what about BIH and NATO? Considering the complex geopolitical situation and the Russian aggression in Ukraine, at the NATO summit in Madrid, BIH was identified as one of the 3 most vulnerable countries, in addition to Moldova and Georgia. As a result of that, a defense capacity building package, the DCB, was adopted to strengthen the country's defense and security capabilities. Though the Allies endorsed the package in February 2023, it is not yet operational. Contributions are still being accepted, but the process is unfortunately very slow. It needs to be as robust as possible and as quickly as possible. Because there is a valid reason for an increased interest in Bosnia-Herzegovina from the alliance. Jens Stoltenberg, he visited BIH and the region just some weeks ago, and he witnessed personally the destructiveness of ethnopolitics in place. On the positive side, my embassy, we conducted a research together with one of our partners. And that research, we found that 2/3 of the population in Bosnia-Herzegovina is in favor of NATO membership. 1/3 actually in the Serb entity, Republika Srpska. That is a positive and important encouragement. So what can we do as international community, as allies? It is not merely about NATO's cooperation with just another partnership for peace country, because the stakes are much higher. It was the international community who helped end the war in that country. It was the international community that actually crafted BIH constitution. And we can say that Bosnia-Herzegovina is still, on paper, and unfortunately also in practice, an international protectorate. 28 years after the war, BIH is strongly reliant, and I would dare to say addicted, to help of its international partners and friends. My country, Norway, has always pursued a policy which is impartial and balanced. However, it is not always easy to find a middle line given the 3 completely diverging policies of the 3 main ethnic groups. This is ethno-political leaders. Furthermore, it is not easy to reach consensus among the western part of the international community. Unfortunately, we are somewhat divided. Given the same values that we have, this is a true pity, and that needs to change. Keep in mind that nearly all progress in Bosnia-Herzegovina and most of the region of the Western Balkans is a direct result of the pressure of the international community. In one form or another, we shall therefore all work hard to help curb these issues. And for that, we need a joint and coordinated approach and a united stance, first and foremost of the European Union and NATO. Finally, the Western Balkans is immensely important for the security of Europe, also bearing in mind the current geopolitical situation. So let us not allow a security vacuum in this region. that will have serious spillover effects. We do certainly not need another hotspot in the heart of Europe. But BIH may certainly and easily become one. So this seminar should probably inspire us to put BIH and the Western Balkans on our radar. Let's discuss how to assist and adopt packages that will support it politically and financially. Many thanks. Grazie mille.
Thank you very much. Mr. Geiser, so we heard a lot about crises there, and that what the ambassador described as the situation that has never been as bad as it is. And I guess what we are seeing, for instance, in Kosovo, it's not so much different, right?
That's correct. Does it work? Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, of course, Ambassador Minuto Rizzo, Alessandro Politi, and all the team for having me here. And I would like to start right from one personal moment I would like to share with the audience. Before leaving for Kosovo last year in October, a predecessor, a good friend that is here in this room, told me, Laris, don't worry. At the end of the day, what you have to do is to report to Mons, to report to Brussels, to report to Napoli. Everything is calm. The situation is calm, but fragile. Well, I never experienced the first part, calm. In the last year, it was really an annus horribilis. I think that this was probably the worst mission of KFOR in the last 20 years. So yes, I can only agree the situation is really worsening on the ground. And we are talking about a region that is a region of frozen conflicts. Well, these frozen conflicts are melting down. This is the reality. And this is the reason why NATO is every day more important. And this is the reason why me personally, my KFOR 27 mission experienced the importance of NATO as a first among, let's say, primus inter pares partner in the region together with the European Union and all the other institutions. I have to say, I'm a professor of international relations. I'm an advisor of foreign policy. I've been advisor for foreign policy of different countries, of different governments. And I never experienced such a hand-in-hand approach as in the last year between NATO and European Union. That was fantastic to see. Well, how European Union and NATO found finally the common path, finally the common goal, and let's see, of course, pushed by, unfortunately, the same threats. What is the situation? Well, the situation is that in the last 1 year, at least from the last October, what we experienced is that it was not several crisis management, but just a continuous crisis management. From license plates issues, through barricades, leaving the institutions from Serbs in Kosovo, so not having a judicial system working in the north, all the consequences on the political stage, and then really wanted clash in spring 2023, where I think KFOR answered in a very correct way in trying to maintain impartiality. So let's say in a passive, active way. Unfortunately, having wounded soldiers, something unacceptable. And then arriving to September issues of finding the weaponaries, etc., etc. All the period is just showing that all the perspectives, all the, let's say, the assumptions that we use to build up our strategies are completely dead. They are not existing anymore. So, for the future, let's say, using the words of the Secretary General of NATO, we have a lot of work to do in the Western Balkans. This was said during the last meeting with Blinken. And what the Secretary General did in the last months was to call for the strategic reserve forces. So if the goal was in the past to reach a minimum presence of the international community in this region, Well, forget about that. This is history. It was in the last 23 years. It's not today anymore. There is a vacuum. There is a problem. There is an issue. And now forces probably of all the international community, NATO forces, KFOR forces, I don't know, United Nations, European Union, they will go up. Because now we have to calm down the situation that is burning there. So the military presence is absolutely out. The region is not resilient. It's not self-sufficient. And unfortunately, it's driven only by egoistic agenda that are certainly not taking care of our future. Our future, I intend, of the Euro region, European Union and NATO together. They're taking care of themselves. And they're taking care of egoistic short-term agendas. And this is creating clashes. And this is creating, for us, big problems and big issues. But why they're doing that? And now, who knows me, you know, I'm coming from a very complicated family. I'm from an Austrian family. I was born in the Federative Socialist Republic of Yugoslavia. I grew up in Italy. I served this country as a diplomat of Italy. So, you know, we Austrian, we experience the creation of psychology in a very decadent environment of the decadency of the empire. It means I'm a pessimist. As a Balkan guy, born in Yugoslavia, I'm a pessimist. So thanks God, I have the Italian side, I'm an optimist. So putting everything together, I'm a realist. In this my realism, I see that we have really to join the forces, as we did in the last year, European Union and NATO. We have to get back on the track with a real concrete strategy for the future. We lacked of that because the focus was somewhere else. And now, of course, what is going on in this region is to create instability, or let's say we are creating instability. And the countries, as I said in the last 2 years ago, I think, last conference I was invited here, these countries in this region, they should fight for their own path toward NATO and toward the European Union. They're not doing that. They're creating chaos, they're creating tensions in order to push us in the trap and to say, well, in order to calm down the situation, we have to enlarge. Well, that's not the correct approach in the international environment. We should not be felt trapped, but they have to do their job and they have to be they have to respond and they have to be resilient for themselves, and then they can be admitted in the bigger community. I stop here because, sorry, it's 000.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. So now that we know what has gone wrong, Alina and I have to you, and apologies, because actually we talked about putting your presentation first, but no pressure there. Now it's a good time for a plan of action. And I think that is something that you could deliver. Please go ahead.
Oh, well, yeah, no pressure indeed. Thank you. First, thank you very much for having me here. It is the first time that I'm speaking at the NATO College Foundation, but I hope it's not going to be the last time, given my 7-minute speech. I will pick up from where Ambassador Ildam left, or on something that he actually said, which is that NATO's efforts towards the region, towards the Black Sea region, have not been strategic, have been sporadic. The bad news is that I think they are still sporadic, and it's not only NATO, it's indeed the international community. It's the US as well, it's the European Union as well. This is the bad news, that despite of an ongoing war, the efforts are still, little patches or bigger patches on things that are exploding, literally. The good news is that there are more and more eyes on the region, and there is more and more concentrated attention on the security of the region from the US, which is actually trying to push through a Black Sea strategy, a Black Sea Security Act. From France, which already has such a strategy, from Italy, which is considering such a strategy, from Germany, which is avoiding such a strategy, although there are debates about such a strategy in the Bundestag. So there is an understanding that a comprehensive approach to the region is very much needed, and that this comprehensive approach has to take security in its larger sense. It's not only military security, but it's also economic security, and it's also societal resilience and societal security. The bad news again is that there are, as I already mentioned, at least 4 strategies out there, and probably there are going to be even more, and that none of them is actually being adopted or being implemented. So I thought, why not try to sketch what are the most important, and to my mind, as I counted several times, 5 elements that would enhance the resilience of the region, would enhance the security of the region, addressing both its economic and military security, and very much focusing on the actions of the littoral states, be them member states or be them partners of NATO. So the first one that comes to mind, to my mind at least, is connectivity, ensuring connectivity in the region, connectivity between countries, connectivity within countries. This was proven once again with the urgency and the immediacy of sending everything that we need to send to Ukraine and getting out everything we need to get out from Ukraine. Having border crossings function and having serious, decent connection between logistical hubs, be them in Poland, be them in Romania, be them in Bulgaria, be them in Ukraine, and into the transportation routes. This is important not only for economic resilience, this is also very important for military mobility, which is extremely low in the region. If we are talking about serious security of the region, the military mobility has to be urgently addressed. The second that comes again to my mind is ensuring freedom of navigation. This has not, the maritime security, the Black Sea, the basin of the Black Sea, its security has not been taken seriously so far. It's not taken seriously now, despite of the Black Sea being a theater of war. As long as the freedom of navigation is not being ensured, is not being secured, as long as there are mines which are threatening the commercial ships, as long as there is Russia, which is threatening every ship that is navigating in the sea, not even the territorial waters of Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey are safe because of the mines. So as long as the sea is not a free sea to be navigated, we cannot really talk about economic resilience, let aside about security. And here again, I welcome the collaboration between Turkey, Romania, and Bulgaria on demining the sea. The third element that comes to mind is we have to consider the entire sea. When we talk about the security of the Black Sea, we tend to focus on the littoral member states, Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey, and we talk about their land defense, air defense, territorial waters, but we tend to ignore Georgia, we tend to ignore the fact that, we tend to ignore Moldova and the little access that it has to the sea. As long as these 2 countries, not to mention Ukraine, are not secure and their portion of the sea is not secure, we can't really talk about a security of the Black Sea. And the protracted conflicts in Transnistria, Abkhazia, and South Ossetia do not help in having the security. Second element, which enhance both economic and military resilience of the region, is developing the domestic defense, their domestic defense industries, such that there is interoperability and the possibility of building economies of scale. Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, they are developing now their domestic, Ukraine as well, they're developing their domestic industrial defense industries, and if they are designed such that they can come together when it comes to procurement, when it comes to production of certain elements, this would very much help, not only help create the economies of scale that I mentioned, but to speed the process of getting these industries off the ground. Last but not least, and this should probably be the first, is the mouth of the Danube River. This has been this has been ignored for so many years, for so many decades, despite the fact that it's extremely strategically important, both from the economic and security point of view. If the mouths of the Danube are secure, and obviously they are not secure, only yesterday there was another explosion on the Ukrainian territories. If the mouth of the Danube are secure, they could enhance the land security of both Ukraine and Romania in this part of the region, and they would contribute greatly to make the Danube the transportation canal and the transportation route that it can actually be for smaller ships. It's an important strategic part of the region that again has been ignored and is still being ignored by NATO, US, and all the others which are considering strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And because you spoke about the freedom of navigation, may I ask you, Mr. Ildem, because Turkey has a tool box that it can use, started to use to make sure that there is a better control of what's going on in the Black Sea. Turkey has invoked important articles of the Montreal Convention, but is there more than that Turkey could do with this regard?
Well, in terms of the invocation of the relevant articles of Montreal Convention were quite important for NATO at a time when Russia was insisting that it was a special operations. Turkey was the perhaps first country to officially declare that it was a war. And the measures taken afterwards once again showed that it was sort of a security guarantee in maintaining stability in the region as such, although there is a war going on. I very much agree with my colleague who has alluded to different points regarding the connectivity. It is extremely important. And to start with this mine countermeasures is one step, but there are a number of other steps to be taken. I also wish to emphasize the point that she raised, how to better bring about capabilities by using the technological infrastructure of different countries. For instance, Turkey has been quite progressing in the defense industry, and we know Bayraktar drones, known by Ukrainians during their war efforts. The Ukrainian ambassador was telling me that many newly born babies were given the name Bayraktar because of that. But there is such a potential for the regional littoral countries to join forces initially, but also not to neglect the importance of the contributions of partners. I fully agree that Georgia, Ukraine, and Moldova should be in the picture. Turkey has been, for instance, supportive of the accession of these countries, Georgia and Ukraine, and we were trying to strengthen their defense capacity. And it will be a collective effort. And when I was critical regarding the sporadic nature of these efforts, I hope that in the coming months and years, we should be more focused and structured in our thinking, looking at it in a more holistic way. But one important consideration should also be given in everything that we are going to do as an alliance, and we have to see that already we have elevated our deterrence in defense by including 2 battle groups in Bulgaria and Romania, elevating it from battalion level to brigade level. These are all important things. Air police mission and Turkey is making great contributions in that respect. But in all our efforts, we should at the same time put in place risk and escalation management. It is also something we should not distance ourselves from, because at the end of the day, we don't want many conflict theaters to expand, and we don't want Black Sea to be the real confrontation and conflict zone. Already we have protracted conflicts in the wider Black Sea region, and we need to come up with sound, feasible strategies for the security of the region.
And we also don't want the Balkans, the Western Balkans, to be a new conflict zone either. I think Mr. Geiser was speaking about joining forces with regard to both sub-regions. So how could NATO and the EU join forces there? And is the current situation not maybe a result of a failure of the EU's engagement there?
Exactly. Well, Norway, not being a member of the European Union, that
can
is
criticize openly.
What was interesting, what you were saying concerning the situation in Kosovo, is that you have seen an excellent cooperation and coordination between the European Union and NATO. As I said in my intervention, that is not necessarily the case, unfortunately, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that is so important, and that is why Jens Stoltenberg, when he was in BIH, he emphasized, how important and how well-functioning this cooperation really is, without being it, and that is also the message we have to convey as an alliance and allies. That is, it is working, because it has to be perceived that it is working quite well. So what are we, it is not that we see different on what is actually going on. But I think that there are actors in the alliance that now are saying that we simply have to base our decisions on facts and not necessarily on wishful thinking. We have to stop that. Because the facts are that Milorad Dodik, he has crossed so many red lines, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years. And there has no implications whatsoever, no consequences. He can just continue, not only with cessation rhetoric, but cessation actions, concrete laws. They are preparing for cessation. We know eventually that he will take that card and will play it. Namely, we will have independence. Maybe he already will do it on the 9th of January in 1 month on the RS day. And we know that the Bosniaks, the majority, they will not sit quietly and see that. And that is also the other aspect of this, because it's not only about the Serbs, 49% of the territory. It is certainly also about the Bosniaks. What has happened in BIH, and unfortunately in the Balkans in general, is that this is a region that has been gradually imploding. It's a small region. It's 18, 19 million people. That's what we're talking about. But the external pressure on this region is massive. It is massive from Russia, the Middle East, European Union, United States. Everybody has a stake in this region because it is geopolitically so important. And tiny little Bosnia and Herzegovina, previously, 5 years ago, 3.2 million people. There are 2.7, 2.6 million people left in that country. And that will not eventually just not continue. For all practical purposes, there is actually no construction industry left in BIH. In 2 years, there is no agriculture sector. And for all practical purposes, there's not a decent healthcare system in that country already now. Do not get seriously ill in Sarajevo and go into hospital. Please don't. And that is my fear that... So we see all this, European Union see it, NATO see it, we all see it, but where we disagree is how to apply the toolbox, because the toolbox is pretty rich. It is actually massive, the toolbox. But we cannot agree, for instance, on the setup of U4. That is probably the biggest divergence in views. We have a commander, a command structure currently. Currently it's Austrian. 1st of January it'll be Hungarian. The Austrians say that we need more mobility. I need, as a second responder, I need to have a couple of helicopters enabling me to go quickly from Butimir, Sarajevo, south to the country. It's hard. He needs more people. He doesn't get it. Secondly, it is how do we see the OHR, the High Representative, according to Miller, the German tourist, because he is not legitimately there, because Russia vetoed him in the Security Council. So what happens is that at least the United States, United Kingdom, they are strongly, clear in their committed support to the High Representative. And we see the European Union is more vague, maybe seen in the light of EU accession, because they want, it is very strange to have a candidate country and at the same time to increase military forces there. And also at the same time, support Christian Schmidt, making Bosnia and Herzegovina into an international protectorate. Thirdly, it is differently on sanctions. Who do we sanction? So, I would very much, and then, Norway, okay, we have one of the founding fathers of NATO, loyal partner of NATO, we are not a member of the European Union as such. What we take pride of is that it is our balanced, always balanced approach, impartial approach. We say clearly that this is not the time to throw the High Representative under the bus. We should support OHR right now. But at the same time, it is also important for us to maintain dialogue. I meet Milorad Dodik frequently. I met him last time, 18th of October. I will meet him hopefully again before the 9th of January. I will ask him if he is going to actually go for the final, move. He's irrational. That is a problem. He doesn't have the economic abilities to go for independence, but I don't think he cares, because he is irrational and he's hurt, and that makes him dangerous. So to answer your question in very, very briefly, I don't think we have that complete coordination and cooperation as between the two main parties here, as we have it in Kosovo. But I certainly hope that to see it, and this is at least the message we have to convey.
Thank you. So we have a toolbox, partly unused for the Western Balkans, for instance, and Russia is still able, despite the ongoing war in Ukraine, to exploit the situation. How is it possible? Explain, please.
I think that what is going on in Ukraine is anyhow weakening Russia for being actively present physically in the Balkans. Certainly, what we are creating, I intend the Balkan region, is that, of course, we are easing to the third actors the malign presence in the region, or let's say the possibility to manipulate. And this is, of course, what, for example, Russia, but also China, if you want, are great specialists. They, of course, are fantastic masters in info war or in propaganda, in manipulating the situations. So what the region is creating is already enough for the third actor from outside to misuse against our, of course, environment. Do we have a toolbox? Of course we have a toolbox. Do we use a toolbox? Not at all. I would like to bring, again, unfortunately, the experience from Kosovo. But of course, seeing the region as a whole, because this is the problem. This is the vacuum, the black hole is there. And this black hole is in the backyards of the main front, so the eastern flank, where everybody would like to be concentrated, not having the problem inside. So what we experienced together with the European Union was, and believe me, I'm absolutely pro-European, it was that the European Union was unable to act without NATO. So NATO was the toolbox of the European Union in Kosovo in the last year in order to achieve something. Even if the most feasible compromise was because KFOR, NATO, was there. As a stick, yeah, if you want, I can be politically incorrect, I can say as a stick. But let's say as a guarantee, as the mediator, as somebody credible to deliver a blackmail. So European Union was, together with NATO, certainly the main actor, but thanks to NATO in that case. So this is giving us the importance of our effort, the importance of the effort of all the contributing countries in the region, and it's giving also us the understanding how important and huge is the toolbox, but this toolbox is not used because, of course, again, we are all divided. But at a certain point, strategically, we have to decide what to do with this region. And I'm coming back, and I'm closing now immediately, to the Middle European origins and to the Habsburg Empire. We are in front of the same problem as the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the end of the 19th century. What to do with the Balkans, let's say with the Bosnia and Herzegovina, with the Balkans. Let's take it, trying to control the problem, or let's push out, trying not to have the problem, but knowing that this problem will wave us in the future. Here we are, unfortunately. Thanks.
And of course, you spoke, Ms. Inaev, about the role the US is playing there, but when we look at the US, what the Republicans are doing in Congress, the presidential elections looming large over the politicians' mind, and even if President Biden is going to be re-elected, we can assume they will concentrate in the future more on the Indo-Pacific region. So how do you see that problem for the Balkans and the Black Sea region?
I keep using the word strategy because everybody talks about a Black Sea strategy, but we don't have any strategy, especially because, first, there is no money put behind any sort of actions listed on very many pieces of paper. And this is not only the US problem. Yes, the US, in the Congress, the military support to Ukraine has yet again been blocked, which shows that there's gonna be a lot of effort to get this through. Let aside any sort of money through the Black Sea as a region. It's not only, as I was saying, a problem in the US. It's the same problem we are facing in the EU. We have a hard time giving Ukraine the 60 million or 50 million that we promised back in July. So it's not only the US that has a problem when it comes to money for the Black Sea, it's also the EU which is facing sort of the same problem. This is why we cannot really speak about a strategy. First of all, there is no money, there is no budget line in any strategy. And second, and this is something that we haven't quite talked about, but second, what is missing from all of these strategies, what is missing from all the debates, from all the discussions, is what are we going to do with Russia? What are we going to do with Russia, which is a literal state of the Black Sea? So however we turn things around, at the end of the day, we will have to face it. We'll have to find a solution to the Russia problem, and this is going to be the drive of the strategy. Absent that, we have a list of actions and we have a list of objectives and we have a lot of wishful thinking and things which are happening, thank God, and things which will not happen, but we don't quite have a strategy. There is very much concern in the region that the US is not going to have the same presence because of everything that's going on with their domestic politics. I don't share this concern. I do not share this concern because when it comes to the military support to the region and to the military presence in the region, this has been constant throughout the last decades. Despite Trump's threats, despite Trump's discourses, this presence has been there and has been built. Second, the American investments in the region, although they are not as big as they should be, as they would want them to be, they are increasing. And when you have American investment, then you have an American drive to remain present in the region. So I don't think that the U.S. is going to take everything and just go away from the region. It's just not going to happen. They're going to be focused on their elections. That's true, but they will maintain a presence in the Black Sea.
Thank you. So we're ready for your questions, and we would like to hear questions, maybe not so much statements, but of course, I think that the gentleman there was the first. Maybe we can take 2 and then continue here, or even 3. So here, there, and then
Yes.
lady there.
My name is Carlo Trezza. I'm a member of the board of directors of the foundation. My question goes in particular to Ambassador of Norway. DeSantis mentioned the fact that the Dayton agreements were negotiated in the US but signed in Paris. There was one branch of the Dayton Agreement which was signed in Florence, Italy. And I was at a conference yesterday in Brussels from which it came up that this agreement is running into some difficulties because of the war in Ukraine and because of the fact that Russia withdrew from the CFE treaty, and therefore the whole equilibrium, military equilibrium in this area is no longer granted. Can you elaborate on this? Are you aware of this risk that we are running? Another one, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can take the second question and then answer them.
Thank you. My name is Vesa Mamedi, Ambassador of North Macedonia here in Italy. I'm proud and honored to be here, and thanks for the foundation for inviting me. It's again like last year, December 7th. I don't know, is there any connection December 7th with Western Balkans, but probably Ambassador Minuto Rossi would give us even a better explanation. My question, I think that all the time we are listening about descriptive comments of what is the situation. An Ambassador of Norway mentioned that probably you know what I'm going to discuss tonight, and yes, we know, and we know everything what you said, that's correct. But we have to move to something more normative rather than just descriptive. I know that we have many problems, that Professor talked about some egoistic agenda that someone might have in Kosovo, or Dodik, or something else going on inside the Western Balkans. But my question is, do you think that the international community failed in convincing their own public opinion in what it means to use the toolbox? How much we can use from the toolbox? And because that we have failed in convincing our public opinion, we cannot deal sufficiently with Russia, we cannot deal sufficiently with Western Balkans, same goes for the Black Sea. When it comes to the Western Balkans, the international community always asks from us to make bold decisions. North Macedonia changed the name of the country. When it comes the time for international community to make bold decisions, sorry, public opinion thinks that we have next year elections. Well, do you think that the international community has failed in convincing their own public with regard to using the toolbox and how much we can use from the toolbox? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe the last one for this round. And I guess the organizers will kill me for taking so many questions, but I think the lady was before you, I'm sorry. No? Okay, then.
Okay.
A coordinated effort.
I will be very brief. My name is Tullio Morganti. I'm a freelance consultant who has spent the last 30 years in different republics, ex-republics of Yugoslavia, and with different functions. My task is public governance reforms. I've spent a lot of time in Bosnia. My question is, what are we doing to defeat the attitude, as I heard many times in Bosnia, we are a special case. After all, the European Union is as divided as we are. What have we done to build the image that unity can bring us to progress? What happens? Did anybody ever concentrate on what is happening in Brčko, where the communities there are different, but they are functioning together? I had the opportunity at a certain point to put together the chiefs of security and Ministry of Interior of the different republics, including of entities, including Brčko, and having them spontaneously and willingly to draft a common plan for security for Bosnia-Herzegovina. Now, common security plan for BIH is quite of a science fiction thing, but it happened.
So your question?
My question is, what are we doing to foster these efforts and to keep them alive as European Union?
Thank you very much.
I'm Lenita Istasim, ambassador of Kosovo here in Rome. So thank you for this always annual invitation. It's always glad to be here. And it's always interesting to hear actually all the gentlemen and the lady that do serve from time to time in our countries and have this perspective. I would like to bring more this comparison. It was not bring enough, on my opinion, about what's happening in Ukraine and what the influence of this war brought to Western Balkans. Maybe someone woke up and thought that was a frozen conflict, and it would, I really don't like that Western Balkans would be still named as frozen conflict. We have seen so many crises lately, but these were all provoked, and we all know by whom. It's very interesting that there were so many red flags during the war, during the previous years, during 2008, just before we declared independence, even before in 2005, when Russia abandoned contact group because also they were on board, and we were reaching all the standards and criteria to declare our independence. And then after, I would never actually even dream that today we would be talking about this. But anyway, I think that what was happening in all those years, it's also now this tentative to invest on Orthodox pan-Slavism from Russia. And this is more or less the same what we have seen in 90s. So when there were temptation of the ethnic, genocides in Bosnia and Kosovo. What I want to say is that it's really good. The question would be, when we will quit to treat the Balkans, Western Balkans, as a region, but try to see what each country is doing. Because we are talking about very asymmetric systems and very asymmetric perspectives. What was in 1999, it's different today. So I want just to say that we have sometimes also to name it and shame it, that there was a terroristic attack in 24th of September, and we know it was who invested on that. Actually, I would be also interested to hear, is there a report? Because there were facts, everything was black and white, and it will be really, really valuable to have the reports from the NATO and all of course, the international community there. Of course, I want to address also to thank for your service and for the service especially of all the NATO soldiers and especially Italian soldiers in my country. But we have to think that in 2023 there is a different strategy, and the resolution and the rules of engagement has to change because the situation is totally different and the geopolitical situation is different. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention here at this stage. Well, maybe you would like to address the two questions, because I think the public opinion, and then let's treat the Western Balkans not as a whole.
I see that we are
Well,
completely over. Yeah, absolutely.
We have
so
to answer
I
the
will try to
questions.
be flying over, and I thank you very much for all the inputs. Just on the point about the reports, yes, of course, there have been reports, as there have been reports concerning the events of the spring, the clashes. If this is the question, K4, of course, reported correctly to the chain of command, and then is on the chain of command, NATO and the countries to go forward with this. But from K4 side, everything was done correctly, I think. Yes, I agree. Unfortunately, the Western Balkans are a problem. I feel to be free to speak in this way because I'm coming from the same region, because they are a region of mistrust. And they are mistrusting among each other in the region, and in order to link what is the approach of the international community to the Balkans is a bad approach, because they are having altogether mistrust to the Balkan region, because it's something bad always in the hears. And this is true, unfortunately. So there is another coordinated approach. And you know, I'm personally linked to Macedonia, North Macedonia, for some issues, and I know perfectly what has been done and how you have been pushed, and what were the requests from the international community. And now I'm not commenting this is good or not, you know my opinion, but then you're using a completely different approach somewhere else. So this is incorrect. Asymmetric approaches for same problems. You changed all the constitution, I think more than half of the constitution. Somebody else is telling us, no, we are not going to change the constitution in order to be admitted in the big club. So, and the international community is not doing anything on that. They are just accepting the blackmails coming from the region. So yes, it's bad. The international community has not a good strategy, and I think that we have to reshape this approach completely. And this is my point. NATO and EU show the possibility to do it together. I think this is correct. We are part of one family. I had the pleasure to write the Compass strategy.
Running out of time.
Yeah, sorry. And we put it 25 times EU-NATO as a common approach, as a need. The strategy of NATO, 3 times the European Union. It's much less, but at the end, it shows from the ground that come up that proof that we can do that together.
Ambassador, you were asked directly about the agreement and the public opinion.
Exactly. As a humble Norwegian, I'll be quick. Should be done by dinner, I hope.
I think other panelists would be very mad at us.
Yes. Yes, Dayton and Brishko in 2 minutes. That requires a miracle. I'm a Norwegian, I'm not Jesus, so that will be difficult. But what I can say, yes, Dayton is a problem. Dayton is challenged. We have this aspect, we can talk about that bilaterally later. But having said that, Dayton, will the international community, are we bold enough? You were certainly bold, my colleague from North Macedonia, with the Prespa agreement. Are we bold to do that? Are we really going to replace Annex 4 of the Dayton Peace Agreement, which is the constitution of a country? No, we're not. We're not going to take that chance. We tried in 2006 with the so-called April package, and it was the Bosniaks, there were actually 2 Bosniaks, who said no. And we, the international community, we have invested heavily in that. And we have continuing invested heavily, so criticizing the international community is also too easy. When it comes to EU enlargement, EU accession, you can say many things there. I mean, I was for 4 years, you know, in the European Commission, in DG NIR, as a Norwegian spy, because as we are not a member of the European Union, but I was still in the Commission. Yes, be very brief. Dayton, we have to think completely new. We have to, it is not Dayton that will actually bring VIH into European Union or NATO. It is impossible. But we are not even close to be there to start mentioning it. Brško, which is a district strategically extremely important because it is dividing Republika Srpska, the Serbian entity, into two. It is becoming more and more strategically important, and EU4, eventually NATO, we have to have some kind of presence there, and we all know it. That is, I would say, still an artificial unity because it is so heavily financed and subsidized, so they can at least pretend to be friends. I am quite often in Brško, and it is not necessarily, if you go a little bit deeper, the case. But having said that, Brško is certainly an example of what we would like to achieve in this country and in the Balkans. And I fully agree on that when it comes to the definition of, that was the Kosovo ambassador, absolutely. I used to say the so-called Western Balkans. The Western Balkans, I think it is the European Union who can say has this monopoly of definition because Western Balkans is Western Balkans. It is some kind of region, but I can tell you, the issues has to be dealt with bilaterally and not to see always as one group. Thank you.
And I'm afraid we have to leave it here because we are waiting for.
Just 1 minute, if I can reinforce what Ambassador of Kosovo has said. We are talking about strategic competition nowadays while dealing with security issues, but perhaps the stakeholders like NATO and EU are not acting as they should within the context of this strategic competition. We complain about what Russia and China are doing, but I cannot speak for EU, but EU should be one important player to be more strategic in its approach to the region, in its strategic engagement with all the stakeholders in the region. This is what I wanted to emphasize.
Thank you so much, and I think all of us could sign off on that. That the EU has to play a more geostrategically important role. Thank you so much for your attention. We invite you to a coffee break, and the next panel will be up here at 16:25. Thank you.